This is the Hagmann and Hagman Report for today. It's a fabulous Friday edition. It's April 4th, 2014. This is a live broadcast. I'm Doug Hagman, co-host, along with my son Joe Hagman. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagman Report. Folks, you're about to hear 3 hours of unbiased, uncensored news, analysis, information that you need to know in these perilous times. You're listening, folks, to the only show where the news is presented to you in 3D. We look well beyond the headlines and bylines, bring you the news behind the news, and here we are in studio. Boy, it's great to be on terra firma. Still, I'm like the Pope coming out of the plane, kissing the ground, being home after being at our home base here after 12 days on the road, and seemed like in many ways a long 12 days, and we're going to explain part of that here at the opening of the show tonight. Folks, for the new listeners, we've had many check in with us here over the last couple of days. Just want to remind everyone, we do broadcast live every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Our home base, HomelandSecurityUS.com. And by the way, I'll be updating that this weekend with photographs of yours truly, of Joe, of various people we did meet at the Prophecy Conference. Some really interesting information, some notes I took from private discussions with the people there. And anyway, we're also simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There you can tune us in at the Hagmann and HagmanReport.com. Folks, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your belief and your trust in us. Thanks for your investment of 3 hours of your time. You could be watching Gilligan's Island. You could be listening to other programs, but you chose ours, and we thank you for that. And certainly we don't want to squander your time and by filling up with needless information. And I want to thank everyone as well for your kind notes, your emails. They're very important to us. We read them all. Some of you have sent the enormous amounts of information, research information that you've done. Incredible things. And I want to let you know that we have read and are reading and continue to read everything that you send. In fact, we've got DVDs, CDs, notes, handwritten notes, typed out notes, and again, we read them all. And it's we care about you. We care about your findings. We do infuse that information into our own research, and it helps us a great deal. We're going to be talking tonight about a number of things. Opening tonight's broadcast with something that I spent 3 hours in a 3-hour interview today with our good friend John B. Wells, Caravan to Midnight. I'm not sure when that interview will be up at Caravan to Midnight, but we're going to be starting out talking about that. But before we do, Joe, welcome to the studio. Here we are.
Yeah, and folks, if my audio is different than my dad's, I'll be joining him on the other platform we have with the audio. I just wanted to see how this was working tonight. But I also wanted to say I am behind on emails, and I'm going to spend this weekend trying to catch up and get back to those that need to be responded to, and catch up on a few things. Some guest scheduling we're going to be doing, and emails is what I'm going to be spending my weekend doing from the looks of things here, because we got a lot of emails, and tell you don't answer them for a week, or you read them and then you put them in a special folder to reply, and you let 7-8 days go by without taking action. We get thousands of emails, and you can imagine how many you'd have to. It's going to take a long time to get through these, but we'll do it. We'll get it done this weekend, and nobody's being ignored. I just wanted to make that clear.
And we're also behind on phone calls and what have you too. So please, if we've promised you a reply, it's coming. It really is. And I know so is Christmas, but you understand. And by the way, Brandy, yes, I did replace the tail lights, the brake lights in my wife's vehicle. Now, anyone who has, anyone my age, you've got to be longing for, guys, you've got to be really longing for the days of like the 71 Camaro or 72 Camaro or any American-made car where there's room. I did not know I had to be a gymnast to install tail lights and center tail light or brake lights or whatever those things are called. You've got to get into the trunk and then flip on your side and make sure the planetary alignments are correct, and have a it's not for the faint of heart. And of course, I'm making it sound worse than what it is, but
well, it's like me with computers. I mean, or cars. It would be like me trying to go and create a website with computer code I know nothing about. Cars, same way. We don't really. We can do the basics when it comes to fixing our cars, but anything beyond that is better take it to the mechanic, because we're more likely to screw things up than to get it right.
Heck yeah, and we had. I got to say this too. We had rented a vehicle because together combined. I mean, think of this: combined, our vehicles here would not make the trip to Florida and back. By the way, I still have a flat tire on my vehicle. I haven't gotten to that yet, but we rented a vehicle and brought it back, and of course, you try to clean it up. So, in my infinite wisdom, what I figured the easiest way to do: why use a vacuum when you have a leaf blower? Just saying, it's a kind of a quick way to clean up the inside of any type of crumbs or debris. Surprisingly, it worked out very well. Anyway, I just want to dispense with the funny stuff or the humorous angle. Joe's allowed me to, and we talked about this at the beginning or before the show. Joe's allowed me here some time to discuss what information I provided on Caravan of Midnight. And folks, if you're not a subscriber to Caravan of Midnight, what a wonderful. John is a great guy, and he is really working out there to really provide information. And I've got this feeling. I really do. I feel that the new media, shows like Caravan of Midnight, shows like ours, I think we can make a difference. Now, and it's going to take some time. It's going to, but I think we're making a difference already, and I think that we're really striking at the heart of the enemy when we expand and support the alternative media. And there are plenty of good people. Rick Wiles, for example, Pastor Langford's got an online ministry. We've got a news show that's based on or that views events through the prism of biblical prophecy. We've got, and of course, the Hawk and others, many great hosts. So, in the scheme of things, in the grand scheme of things, I think new media is making a difference. The internet media is making a difference, and I want to thank you. And I want to thank the people too. In Florida, when we talked to as many people as we did, it was so humbling to hear people say, "Hey, you know what? We listened to you on the way down. We drove down. We listened to you on the way down to Florida, or whatever." It was just very humbling. And I received an email, and I don't have the email in front of me from a woman who was listening to, I think, was listening to our program and got into a minor car accident, a fender bender type thing. That wasn't the purpose of our writing, but hopefully it wasn't anything we said. But I want to just say, got your email, and I'm glad you're okay, and I'm glad it was a minor incident. But boy, things happen. At any rate, ladies and gentlemen, if you've listened to this program, you know that I've been working on a research assignment in addition to some other things, but one research assignment, one investigation that has to do with the connections, the lineage, who Barack Hussein Obama is, and why is this important? And you might think, well, here we go again. We're talking about something that we can't do anything about. Well, yes, we can. We can expose this man for what he is, expose the people around him, because we're looking for the truth. Who is he? Who's supporting him? How did he get where he is? We want these questions answered, because at stake is of course, our nation, the body of our nation, our children, the future of our children. If not us, then certainly for our offspring, the generations that follow us. And we don't want our children to curse us for not doing something when we could have. Curse us, at our gravesite, for example. And that might sound dramatic, and perhaps it is, but we need to be proactive. And part of this is, in fact, I wrote it. Let me see if I can find it here. There is a biblical mandate, I would say a biblical mandate, about doing just this. It is found in Proverbs chapter 25, verse 2. It states, "It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the heart of kings is to search out a matter." And that's the way I'm looking at this. Now, folks, check out Caravan to Midnight. 3 hours worth of programming today with John Wells about this very topic. I'm just going to skim over this, but I think this is extremely important to keep in the forefront, or bring to the forefront if you haven't heard this already, or all of it already. We are looking at, and I have been looking at, the Obama situation as Obama being a type of Manchurian candidate. Now, that could very well be misconstrued, but that's the best way I know how to describe Obama. But before I get into what I'm going to get into, let me preface it by saying this. We are looking at evidence, and there's different types of evidence. In the legal arena, different types of evidence. There's direct evidence, and then there's indirect evidence. There's various types of evidence. We are dealing with circumstantial evidence. And just let me say something about circumstantial evidence. Because when people hear the phrase or description, circumstantial evidence, automatically they think it means some sort of weaker or less reliable evidence. Circumstantial evidence is the most often used evidence in criminal trials. But you know what? Our perception of that through books like novels, crime novels, television crime dramas, think CSI or Law and Order, they often perpetuate the belief that circumstantial evidence may not be used to convict a criminal of a crime, or it's of lesser value. But this is absolutely false, because in many cases, circumstantial evidence is the only evidence that links an accused to a crime. Because, frankly, direct evidence might not exist. As a result, the jury, and you folks are the jury, you may only have circumstantial evidence to consider in determining whether to convict or acquit a person charged with a crime. Now, legally, in legal terms, the United States Supreme Court has decided that circumstantial evidence is intrinsically no different from testimonial or direct evidence. And for those sticklers out there, that can be found in the case of Holland v. United States, 348 U.S. 121, and that's a 1954 determination.
So, if I can jump in here, when dealing with evidence, a few pieces of circumstantial evidence can be much more reliable than eyewitness testimony in some cases. Eyewitness testimony seems to be, it's agreed upon that most eyewitness testimony is, can change. It's not as reliable as people make it out to be at times. And it obviously can be, it can be twisted, it can be fabricated, it can be misremembered, misunderstood. We're not as reliable and perceptive as we'd like to think we are at times.
That's a very good point, Joe. And circumstantial evidence is the most difficult to manufacture. In other words, to create. You can conspire among others and create some sort of consistent testimony or consistent story, if you will. But it's very difficult to manufacture circumstantial evidence. which makes it more reliable, as you pointed out, Joe, than eyewitness testimony. Eyewitness testimony is ranked probably one of the lowest forms of evidence there is. And circumstantial evidence, folks, and please, this is important for everyone to understand. Not that you all need to be lawyers, but in discussing the matters that we're talking about with another person, with your family or whatever, you can be the source of knowledge in this now, because somebody might say, well, that's just what you're saying. That's just circumstantial evidence, especially if you're talking with maybe somebody educated in the law or somebody who, I find this a lot, who have been watching too many TV shows like Law and Order and CSI and NCIS and stuff that they don't quite understand, and oftentimes they'll discount a matter based on the fact that it's merely circumstantial evidence. So now you can point out, wait a minute, hey, the Supreme Court in 1954 ruled circumstantial evidence has the same weight or carries the same weight as direct evidence. You can show those people up and, well, not show them up, but certainly correct them. And again, it's typically more reliable than direct evidence. Now, it's unfortunate because most people do not understand exactly what circumstantial evidence is. I don't want to make this dry, and I'm just going to briefly finish it by saying this. What it is evidence from which another fact can be inferred. Okay, for example, DNA evidence. What is DNA evidence? That's circumstantial evidence. If a person's DNA is found at the scene of a crime, or fingerprints, that's circumstantial evidence. In the case of DNA, if DNA matching a person's DNA profile is found at the crime scene, then one can infer that the person, or someone with his identical DNA, was present at that scene at some point. Again, the same with fingerprints. So, in sum, circumstantial evidence can be extremely powerful in the courtroom, and certainly powerful in the weight of the conversation that we're having. Direct evidence is evidence that directly proves a fact without the need to draw an inference from another or of another fact. For example, if a person says, "Yeah, I shot John Smith," well, then of course that's direct evidence along with the other evidence that would support that particular person's admission. So just understand that the terminology that we're using is important. And Joe, thank you for that clarification too, because a lot of people think the eyewitness testimony is the most reliable when in fact it's the least reliable. The issue for all of this is and let me preface it by saying this. I said this before, but I want to reiterate this because there are websites out there that are attempting to cast some sort of dissension, or cast us in a light where we are competing with or trying to upstage Sheriff Arpaio and the Cold Case Posse and Mike Zullo. We have nothing but respect for Sheriff Arpaio, Mike Zullo, the Cold Case Posse. We support them 100%. We cannot it would be impossible to upstage them. They are a commissioned law enforcement body. And that's another fact, folks, that you've got to understand, that people must understand, that they are a commissioned law enforcement body. In other words, they have the powers of arrest. They've got the powers of to subpoena others. They've got the weight of the law behind them. Now, what I see where they're running into the trouble is when, for example, a police force or a police officer, detectives, whatever, if they, using this as an example, if they investigate a crime and they have enough evidence to arrest someone. Let's say that someone is extremely high up in the community and is friends with the district attorney. Well, the detectives would go to the DA's office to present the evidence, and the district attorney at that point has the say, usually. And I'm simplifying the process here. But what happens if the DA is refusing to even look at the evidence? What happens if there's the judges or the judges not willing to look at the evidence? Folks, you got problems. This is where we're at today with the case of Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, whatever. The mystery man in the White House, and this is, just to recap a little bit, what we've got in the White House, a man whose pedigree is questionable, his lineage is questionable. He has multiple social security numbers. He has multiple names. And I'm saying this for a point, reiterating this for a point, because we have to look at this in its entirety. And some of this, folks, just bear with me. I know you know this, but let's just present this quickly and as completely as possible. All of the names that Barack Hussein goes by: Barack Hussein Obama, Barack Obama, Barry Obama, Barry Soetoro. There's also Barry Dunham, which could be an artifact or some sort of problem, or sometimes databases are just not, they munge names together when in fact it's not really used anywhere. And then we've got, interestingly, and here is the area of our investigative interest, we've got Barack Sabarka, or Barack Hussein Sabarka. Now, that's number 6 on the list of names for the guy in the White House. Now, Joe and I have conducted investigations, background investigations for Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 500 companies. I've done it for 28 years, Joe for 8. And I've got to tell you, based on our investigation and others like us, Barack Hussein Obama, number 1, does not have any authenticated birth records that have been presented to the public. Number 2, his identity is in question. His legal name is in question. There has been nothing presented or authenticated. There has been no authenticated document to establish his identity. As crazy as that sounds, and I know it sounds nuts. If I have any family members listening, and you know who you are, you're throwing things at your computer, saying, you're an idiot, Doug. I told you that at the last family reunion. Folks, you get the idea. But the fact of the matter is, Barack Hussein Sabarka has appeared in databases as well as one other document. Where Barack Hussein Sabarka appears, that name, is the name Ann Dunham, Stanley Ann Dunham. His mother gave to him on her 1968 application to extend her 1965 passport for an additional 2 years. If you go on YouTube and other, if you go on YouTube, for example, you will hear various people, whether it's P.P. Simmons interviewing or talking with others. You'll hear Dr. Jerome Corsi talk about this. Jack Cashel talk about this. You can find a number of people addressing this issue. On page 2 of that passport application, it's included. The name Sabarka is included, or is written there to include or exclude a child or the dependent of the person extending the passport application. The question concerning this, why his name appears there, is it to include him or exclude him? That is a matter of contention right now. It's frankly, I don't know. We don't know. But the fact that it appears is what is meaningful. Where did the name Sabarka originate? Why? Is it some sort of, well, why? Well, I contend, based on my investigation, that Sabarka is a name that's associated with the cult. I say it's a cult because of its cult-like qualities, but it is associated with the quasi-religious group known as Subud. Now, once again, folks, I'll have a written report on our findings, but I really want you folks to be the first, along with the audience of Caravan to Midnight, to be the first to understand our findings. We go a little bit further than the other investigators and researchers have, at least that I've found, and perhaps with the exception of an internet researcher by the name of Butter D. Zillion. We had her on our program, Joe. When did we have her on our program? When was she on?
It was recently. It was less than, I want to say, a month ago. I'll pull up the schedule here.
All right. It's very important, folks, that her information, the information that she has developed, for you to really grasp that information. If you look on our website, there is an entry there in the center column that does talk about her findings and links to her blog, her website. It's fantastic. It's full of information, and in fact, on her website, it also has a direct connection to the interview that she gave with us. Now, the last name Sabarka, again, that we have found, appears only to be in this one particular official document, which, by the way, has been destroyed. Conveniently, right? Well, as we did some research, we found American Thinker ran 2 articles, one in January, one in February of this year, written by Dr. Jason Kistner. He's an associate professor of criminology at California State University at Fresno. And he did some research and found a very interesting link between Obama's mother and Loretta Fuddy. Okay, now understand this. Obama's mother and Loretta Fuddy. The 2 women were both members of the Subud religious cult organization, quasi-religious organization, which was founded by an Indonesian. The Indonesian's name is Muhammad Sabu Sumo Hadi Widjojo. Yeah, did I pronounce that right? I mean, how do you pronounce a name that's got 27 syllables?
I want to hear that again.
Muhammad, most people call him Muhammad Sabu. That's Subuh.
Okay.
But it's Muhammad Sabu Sumo Hadi Widjojo. I did that pretty well that time. Fuddy, as director of the state of Hawaii's Department of Health, had signed off on Obama's purported certificate of live birth on April 27th, 2011. Well, right before that, days before that. It was released on April 27th, 2011. Now, that was a computer-generated document. Who was responsible for who was the gatekeeper of that document? Who was responsible for authenticating that document? Loretta Fuddy. And conveniently, on December 11th, 2013, Loretta Fuddy was the only person to die in a small plane crash off the coast of Molokai, Hawaii. The only fatality out of 9. When I say plane crash, we're talking about a guided water landing. The information about Subud, it's critical to understand, ladies and gentlemen. If you understand Subud, I've got if you could see the studio right now, the notes are just everywhere. Subud was involved, well, more appropriately. Bear with me for a second here. I do want to get this correct because it is so important to get correct. Joe, you want to sing while I'm doing this or something?
No, but I can jump in here. I know that you have. Well, I haven't seen all of them, but you said there was over. I overheard you saying that you had over a couple hundred pages of notes, and I know you've been working on this constantly in your free time and trying to put together all this information to put a comprehensive report together.
Okay. Yeah. I have now. I found the notes. Thank you for doing this, and thank you for verifying this. Subud was created or was founded in the 1920s, and folks, you can find, if you just do a simple search on Subud, you can find the background of Subud and, of course, where it comes from. But I'll just tell you this: this is the public side of Subud. Subud is just what is Subud? What's the name? Well, the name is actually a combination of three Sanskrit words: Cecilia, which means noble or high quality or correct behavior; Buddhi, which is a spark of the divine. No, I didn't say Buddhi. I said that Buddhi, spark of the divine that is in everything; in Dharma, which is the possibility to surrender and be guided by God or the universe. So right away you're looking at this assimilation or apparent assimilation of all religions, whether it's Buddhism, Islam, some may even argue Christianity, but it's really a New Age kind of, it has a New Age feel to it if you look at it based on its own description. Now, that's where the name comes from. Now, the real interesting part, and as I said, the founder, Muhammad Sumu Hadi with Jojo, he had this nickname, Bapak, B-A-P-A-K. By the way, he lived from 1901 to 1987. He passed away in 1987. As we researched Subud, we found that it was established in Indonesia. And where has Obama hailed from? Where is he? I mean, essentially, did he spend his formative years, if not birth and beyond? Indonesia, perhaps. Beyond birth, that is. I'm sorry, not being born there. In Indonesia. Remember, Obama's mother lived in Indonesia, worked in Indonesia in the 60s, mid-60s. But here is an important fact. Obama's mother worked in Indonesia in the mid-60s when this leader of Subud was a key player in the 1965 CIA-engineered coup against President Sukarno. Now, this is really important to understand. When you look at the entire picture, you've got Stanley Ann Dunham working in Indonesia in 1965. At the same time, you've got Subud, the leader of Subud, this ostensible or this purportedly benign, benevolent organization, the leader in which was a key player in this CIA-engineered coup against President Sukarno in 1965. Can this be verified? Absolutely. By accounts of the people in Indonesia, certain party members in Indonesia who were there and were victimized by this coup. The Communist Party of Indonesia, known as PKI, and Sukarno's foreign minister, Dr. Sabandrio, as well as the prime minister who was assassinated, Ceylon's prime minister who was assassinated. They all accused Sabood as being a front for the Central Intelligence Agency, for the CIA. Now think about that. This is the key. This is a huge part of the story. This in no way can this be minimized. What does this mean relative to Barack Hussein Obama's mother, Stanley Ann Dunham? Could it be that Stanley Ann Dunham was actually being part of Sabood, perhaps? But could she have been an asset, or some sort of asset for the CIA? Oh, and by the way, Sabood maintains a religious compound where? In Front Royal, Virginia, about an hour's drive from where? From the CIA headquarters in Langley. Even today. So think about that. Which agency has the ability, for example, to change documents, to change identity documents, coerce cooperation from federal and state employees? Well, obviously we know the answer to that. Everyone really needs to take a look at this. Consider that Barry Soetoro, Barack Hussein Obama, Barack, or selected name, but Mr. Sabarka and his mother lived together in Jakarta, Indonesia from 1967 until 1971. That was until Barry Soetoro was sent to live with his grandparents, Stanley and Madeline Dunham, in Honolulu, Hawaii, where his grandmother, Barry Soetoro's grandmother, was vice president of the Bank of Hawaii. You've got his mother in finance in Indonesia during, concurrent with, and subsequent to a CIA operation that resulted in the overthrow of the Indonesian government. And meanwhile, you've got his grandmother involved in banking in the state of Hawaii. Boy, there's a lot of interest in banking within the Dunham clan, wouldn't you say? In the 1980s, Ann Dunham, or Stanley Ann Dunham, or Ms. Soetoro, pick a name, she would take a definite interest in microfinance programs through her work with the Ford Foundation, and would be linked up with Peter Geithner, the father of Timothy Geithner. Now, can we call this a coincidence? Is this a coincidence, or is this something more? I suggest there is something more here. Obama's mother was linked and has been linked to the Sabood organization, even perhaps as early as the early 1960s. And many have said, off the record, that it was his mother, Obama's mother, that instilled some sort of interest in her son and possibly her daughter, Obama's half-sister. By the way, his half-sister describes herself currently as a philosophical Buddhist, but okay. You can be a Buddhist or whatever and still be part of a Sabood and the leader's teachings. But the important part here is the proximity. What what was going on in Indonesia in the 60s. Now, if we want to go back a little bit further, and I think it's important to do so only to understand the context in which things were operating. Subud began growing, or really taking root, in the northern coast of the Indonesian island of Java in the 1920s. It was recognized officially in the 1940s in Indonesia as a religion. I don't intend to go through this, the documentation or anything during this broadcast, but I will say this. If you look at the Subud, its leader, we'll just refer to him by his nickname, Bapak, and some of the top people of Subud, there is overlap between Subud, the Muslim Brotherhood, and dare I say this, the Nazis, the National Socialist Party. Now, lest I be accused of being partisan, understand that George Herbert Walker Bush, the Dulles brothers, understand that this transcends politics. This goes beyond political lines. And I know this is pretty complex stuff, but what we're seeing here is overlap. We're seeing interplay between political parties, which is why today I would contend that there's no two-party system. It's a one-party system. Oh, and by the way, you're not part of that party. You're not even invited to the party. There's just an immense amount of circumstantial evidence that would suggest that Subud is the golden thread, that one thread that connects everything together. Now, let me fast forward for the sake of time, because I don't want to take up the entire program with this or any more than necessary, but this is important to understand. And again, I would reiterate for those joining us late, please check out Caravan to Midnight, John B. Wells' program, where I was a guest today for 3 hours. I'm not sure when it'll be up, but it should be up, and I think you'll find it pretty interesting. But having said that, why are we talking about this?
And not to interrupt you, but I just got an email that the episode, your appearance on John B. Wells' show tonight, has been uploaded. So.
Oh, cool. All right, great. Actually, you know what? I couldn't. I screwed up my password. I'm trying to find. So I'll listen to it. And you know what, folks, if you liked it, if you listened to it and liked it, certainly send John B. Wells a little note saying it was good, or boy, if I stunk up the place, you can also tell him that too. But just a note of support that hey, you're listening, that type of thing, because those emails do make a difference. But as we look at Subud and what's going on and how it relates to, most people are asking by now, I'm sure, well, what does this have to do with anything going on today? Well, let's take a look at what has happened here of late. I'm looking at the as I said, I've got, as Joe mentioned, I've got over 200 pages here of notes, and it would take really a day or two to really get into this, a day or two of conversation, of presentation, to really understand how critical this is. Think of Subud as what one would consider, and I would say this, what one would consider to be this, well, by design, this very nebulous organization. And by the way, this organization's only got about 20,000 members worldwide, only had 20,000 members worldwide at its height, perhaps maybe half of that today. But think of Subud as a cover. It's a vehicle. And the reason I mentioned the events in the past is we must grasp understand the weight of those particular times. People want to blow off history, but it is so important to today, what's going on today. Subud, I will mention, hold on here, I'm not going to get into that yet, but, well, you know what, I'm going to, because one of the, just to go back to this, one of the unexplained mysteries of Obama, in addition to the lack of information, the scanty documentation of his early life, of course, it goes back to that name Sabarka. Where did that come from? And again, I mentioned it first appeared on the passport. The only reason for it to appear that I can find is directly related to Subud. Now, there's a saying: absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. If you understand that, of course, you understand that there could be another explanation. However, it would be less likely in my view, because the surname Sabarka has never been satisfactorily explained by anybody. But it does indicate a name change or a change in even citizenship, but a change prompted by, facilitated by, or otherwise associated with Subud. What I found fascinating and very relevant, and Nathan Leal had talked, Paul McGuire had talked about this a lot. Remember the discussions, Joe, that we had about the 60s and about Laurel Canyon and about what was going on back in the 60s, Laurel Canyon. Remember all that, Joe?
Somewhat. I'm sure the more you get into it, I'll remember.
Well, it's interesting to find here, and again, I have to go to a different part of my notes for this because it's extremely important. Subud had its tentacles into Hollywood. It had its tentacles into music, social engineering. Some Subud members were members of very extremely popular groups like the Mamas and the Papas, I believe. There were some pretty big names associated with Subud. If you look at Subud as having a structure very similar to Freemasonry, where the lower level members, if you look at it like a pyramid, the lower level members are people who just believe it's this innocuous, benign organization, but the people at the top actually control certain things. And it's kind of a secret club, if you will. And if you look at it as perhaps a front of our Western intelligence, the CIA and the Brits and the French, but beginning in Indonesia, then you'll understand the danger. And you have musicians back in the 60s, very popular musicians, and the Hollywood actors involved in Subud. Now, does this remind you of anything that's going on today? What other organization fits that description today that's well known? That's right, Scientology. We have found a direct correlation, a direct relationship between Subud and Scientology. And this is where Nathan Leal, too, mentioned L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons. And he did mention that. I didn't imagine that, right? We talked briefly about that. Okay, right. So there is some overlap here. And, of course, early on, prior to the 60s, going back into the 40s, you're looking at the overlap in associations with Muslim Brotherhood and the National Socialist Party. Muslim Brotherhood being important because who's in the White House right now? Obama, but who else? I mean, who's part of the executive branch? Members of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah, there has been a influx of, and I remember recently, the most recent, and I'm not sure if this gentleman was approved or not, but the number 3 in the DOJ was a internationalist who was part of the Muslim Brotherhood. And I remember reading the article about his wanting America to embrace international law and international treaties under the authority of the UN. And that's the latest one, at least I remember, in a high position of government authority.
Right. Exactly. And this is an outgrowth or a direct result of the events leading up to it, of course. Go ahead.
Well, and, we talk about the Muslim Brotherhood, then you have, John Kerry, which we have news on his Mideast peace push today in a place like Skull and Bones, these little evil cults and secret societies that, it's basically like religion. They create all these different denominations for the same purpose.
Exactly. And therein lies the importance, too. I just want to touch on this because it's important. And if it seems like I'm hopping around here, I apologize. But we had mentioned Laurel Canyon, for example. If you look at the events of the 1960s in historical context, you can see why, in part, we're here today, where we're at today. Maybe Nathan Leal talked about the Tavistock Institute. That's part of it. But the religious or quasi-religious sect cult with international ties being Subud based in Indonesia has played just a much bigger role in American life than anyone can understand. The Subud and CIA mind control operations are linked. Stanley Ann Dunham Sotoro, whatever you want to call her, was involved within this group, as I mentioned before. But when you throw in now the overlay of Subud and CIA mind control operations, you're looking at a different animal altogether. And I mentioned Scientology before. We did just return back from a trip from Florida for the Prophecy in the News Conference, but what else is down in Florida? The headquarters of Scientology. And members,
which we did not get a chance to check out.
Of course not. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Now, just going back to Laurel Canyon just for a moment here, in the 1960s, there's social engineering taking place. There was social engineering taking place. The members of Subud here, at least in America, some members were extremely popular. For example, and I'm going through, once again, bear with me, I'm going through my notes. Well, think about the 60s. If you were paying attention back then, remember all of the interest in Eastern philosophies, religious teachings? They appear to be at their peak, and numerous rock stars of the day took a great interest in Subud. Some of the more notable members of Subud were the members of the rock group, the Association, the Byrds, the Beach Boys, the Mamas and the Papas, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and of course the Manson family, their relationship with the Beach Boys. This gets pretty intense, some of the connections here. One of the better-known Subud followers, members or whatever, was Roger McGuinn, the leader of the Byrds. And of course, if you're old enough, you remember he's famous for his special, what is it, a 12-string guitar, but Mr. Tambourine Man in the song Turn, 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 it's that guy. So there was a lot of social engineering at the hands, I would contend, at the hands of the CIA back in the 1960s. And dead center in all of this social engineering was none other than a young Barack Hussein Obama Sabarka, as well as his mother, Stanley Ann Dunham. So if we can make the connection here, or if we can at least ask the question, was Obama's mother and perhaps even his grandmother and others, were they involved in some type or some at the periphery, maybe even at the outer layers of the CIA social engineering and mind control? Could it be? That's a question that needs to be answered, because I think that there is circumstantial evidence that would suggest yes. But what does that matter today? Let's fast forward to 2011 very quickly as I wrap this up. Well, we'll go back to 2008 very quickly. You have Barack Hussein Obama having risen meteorically to fame, certainly going to be the next president of the United States. He was selected by who? By the Trilateral Commission, by the Council on Foreign Relations, by the movers and shakers, by the secret societies. Yes, selected first and then ostensibly elected. But he lacked the necessary identifying documents. One being the piece of paper known as the Certificate of Live Birth that is required, constitutionally required, for him to fill the office of the president. When you've got a problem like that, you can bet that you're going to call on your closest people, members of your inner group, your clique, your secret society, if you will, to handle it, to take care of things. Enter Loretta Fuddy. Well, Loretta Fuddy was brought in on board in 2011 at the height of the birth certificate or certificate of live birth controversy, after Dr. Palafox was resigned, and I use that as a verb in this case. Dr. Palafox resigned his position and was replaced by Loretta Fuddy, the only non-medical doctor ever to hold that position as the director of health in the state of Hawaii. Brought not necessarily, well, she was brought from Seattle, where she served as a administrative director in the Subud organization, once again having ties to Obama's mother. So she was brought into the health department in Hawaii. 2 months later, she authenticated, or 2 months, within 2 months, she authenticated the certificate of live birth for Obama, and then fulfilled her role as gatekeeper. And then in December last year, December 11th, 2013, she was the sole fatality of this plane crash, and I use that tongue-in-cheek, or not tongue. It wasn't a plane crash, but you get the idea. Loretta Fuddy, as an asset, initially became a liability. They basically had to get rid of Loretta Fuddy. Why? Because, well, could it be because she knew too much? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. But isn't it curious that we have an incident like this, a plane crash, where she is the only fatality? The circumstances of her getting into the position, assuming the position via Governor Abercrombie, also no stranger to Subud, a good friend of Obama's mother, a member of Subud. Everywhere we turn around, Subud comes up. And we know, or we have good reason to believe, we have better reason to question whether Subud is in fact an operation of the CIA. It certainly would seem that if you go back to the Dulles brothers and the CIA's predecessor, OSS. But the name Sabarka, I contend, and I'm going to wrap it up with this, the name Sabarka, I contend, is an artifact of the Subud religious sect, that it holds the key to unlocking the entire non-criminal, well, the entire background of the Obama, Sotoro, Dunham women in banking, their relationship to the higher powers in terms of the movers and shakers, the powers that be, as they are called. Subud appears to be the common factor, or the most common factor, of everything that we found that exists today, existed in the 1960s, and actually predates Obama. The bottom line here is Subud appears to be the vehicle that was used and is still being used to cover the identity, the origins, the background of Barack Hussein Obama. And it's not, in other circumstantial evidence as well, it began in Indonesia. Obama obviously spent time in Indonesia. It spread to the state of Washington. Obama's mother and Loretta Fuddy, the state of Washington. Same with Hawaii, was another another hot spot for Subud. The same deal with Obama's grandparents and parents, or mother, I'm sorry. And lastly, excuse me, the headquarters, the USA headquarters, where's it located? Chicago. Now, that's kind of a thumbnail sketch of a very complex investigation. Folks, I hope I've made some sense here, at least in asking some legitimate questions. Could Loretta Fuddy have been installed? Was she installed as the director of health because of her connections to Subud, because of her connections to Obama's mother, because of her ties to this nebulous organization with ties to the CIA? And if so, does that not make the guy sitting in the White House potentially a Manchurian candidate?
Created and uploaded to YouTube by the Hagmann and Hagmann channel. To view the full show archives, please visit youtube.com/user/Hagmann and Hagmann.
Number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Friday, April 4th, 2014. We're going to be getting into some news this hour and maybe some phone calls. We'll see how the news goes, as we have a lot of it on the economy. We have news from the government. We have news from the Middle East and things that are happening all across the world. But first I'm going to start with news from the State Department. State Department misplaced $6 billion under Hillary Clinton. IG report reveals incomplete, lost contract files worth $6 billion. This is from the Free Beacon. Says the State Department misplaced and lost some $6 billion due to improper filing of contracts during the past 6 years, mainly during the tenure of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, according to a newly released Inspector General report. The $6 billion in unaccounted funds poses a significant financial risk and demonstrates a lack of internal control over the department contract actions, according to the report. The alert, originally sent out on the 20th of March and just released this week, warns that the missing contract funds could expose the department to substantial financial losses. The failure to maintain contract files adequately creates a significant financial risk and demonstrates a lack of internal control, as this report states. The contract related to the U.S. war in Iraq, for instance, could not be produced in 33 out of 115 instances. And they go on to say that the IG found repeated examples of poor contract file administration over the years. Excuse me. And this is, not just to the State Department, but this is a eye-opener of how the government works as a whole. We have the misappropriation, misuse, and theft of taxpayer money in all areas of government. Our unemployment continues to rise. I heard on Bloomberg News today that the part-time work, people seeking full-time who are employed in a part-time capacity right now, is at an all-time high. We have the Obamacare deadlines and both sides of that issue being pushed hard in the news. They're saying, we have Paul Ryan saying Obamacare is going to collapse under the weight of its own dysfunction, and you have coming from the White House and other pro-Obama places of government saying that 7.1 million and all these people are signing up. While listening to some radio and news reports, you hear some horror stories of people. I heard something on the Herman Cain show yesterday. I think it was yesterday, whenever we took the rental car, where a lady called in who was paying about $200 a month, and then she had some subsidies or tax relief through Obamacare for her new insurance plan, had a pre-existing condition and had some kind of procedure done. They did the procedure and they would not accept the Obamacare premium or plan. So she was billed for the health services she received and had to pay that bill as well as continue to pay her locked-in 1-year health insurance premium, basically getting slammed from both sides of the aisle there. And, this is one of many stories that I've heard of horror stories, really, of the Obamacare health insurance takeover.
But you know what, Joe? And ladies and gentlemen, mission accomplished. Look at it this way. It's to create chaos. It's to destroy the insurance industry. Even if right now Obamacare was revealed, folks, do you think we can get things back to normal or back to the way they were? Just asking. I don't believe we could. So it has not the mission, at least the mission, the unstated, non-public, private, covert mission of this Marxist mentality, this Marxist agenda. Has it not been accomplished?
Absolutely, it has, and it's more than just we're seeing the communist Marxist side of this, as well as you have the fascist Nazi style side, both hand in hand working against the American people, and it's been doing so for really since the inception of America, and gradually it gets worse and worse. Each president brings in new laws and ideas and ways to really usurp the American people and the system of government that was created, I would say, for the purpose of what we see today. But either way, the Bible talks about this a lot, how through liberalism and through charity, people would be stripped, the poor would be stripped naked, would be usurped and abused financially, spiritually, morally, and we're seeing that today in all facets of our society. I mean, the news is so destructive in ways that it's showing how bad society is. But I saw today a mother was suspended as her role as a teacher for criticizing Common Core. Also, in a separate instance, a 13-year-old girl was suspended for speaking out against Common Core and passing out literature. You have financial corruption, religious corruption. You have corruption in the highest and all the way to the lowest branches of public service. You have the citizens who are so dumbed down and preoccupied, basically being brought down to a savage type tribal mentality. And now, instead of people helping people, it's everybody for themselves. It is neighbor against neighbor, family against family. And it's just going to continue to deteriorate until we literally self-destruct.
You know what, Joe, and ladies and gentlemen, we met a lot of people at the Prophecy and the News Conference, and forgive me if this is repetitive, but one of the really, Joe, and I think you could probably verify this. We had so many conversations with people who were down there, and I remember one conversation in particular. Joe, we didn't even get in the doors of the hotel there, the venue in which the conference was being held, and we were talking with a woman, and was it her daughter or a friend? I think it might have been a coworker that they were attending together. And coworker, okay, and they were saying that everybody around, and I remember her saying this, everybody around me thinks I'm crazy.
Her name is Jessica, if I remember correctly.
I think you might be confused because Jessica was talking about Bozeman. I think. I have to. In fact, I got an email from her. But regardless, the consensus is the divide among family members, among people that you know, within the family or within the workplace. The divide is getting greater. Is getting bigger. Some people cannot even have the discussion without it turning very aggressive and ugly. Is this not, or could this perhaps be the intent, where the divide is so great among family? Think of the Civil War, where it was brother against brother and father against son and so on, over this ideology, a different ideology.
And today what we're really seeing is how the church was in the beginning after Jesus was crucified, after Christianity became accepted, more widely accepted. You had the church suppressing and oppressing true Christians, and the church was supposed to be made up of true Christians. And we're seeing that again today. It has not, at least here in America, reached the level of true persecution and death penalties, but we're certainly going down that road. And I have a story here that's a good example of how people need to come together instead of how they need to be divided. In China, Christians formed a human shield around a church in China. China's Jerusalem, they call it, after a demolition threat. It says Christians have flocked to defend a church in eastern China after the Communist Party officials claimed it was an illegal construction and announced plans to demolish it. Thousands of Chinese Christians have mounted an extraordinary round-the-clock defense of a church in a city known as the Jerusalem of the East, after communist officials threatened to bulldoze their place of worship. In an episode that underlines the fierce and long-standing friction between China's officially atheist Communist Party and its rapidly growing Christian congregation, Bible-carrying believers this week flocked to the Zhenjiang Church, hoping to protect it from the bulldozers. The 24-hour guard began earlier this week when a demolition notice was plastered onto the newly constructed church, which cost around 30 million yuan, or 2.91 million euros, and took almost 6 years to build. And you see these thousands of people in the picture here, in a few pictures here, literally forming a human shield. We don't have that kind of brotherhood, Christian brotherhood, even here in America. I mean, how many Americans would get off their butts to do this to a church in America if it was threatened? Would there even be 1,000? I mean, depending on the city.
We just saw a church, and I just caught the tail end of the story, folks. And this would be good for everyone to research, or at least understand. In New York, I believe it was in New York City, definitely in the state of New York, where there was a court ruling that required, or that allowed, or paved the way for, whatever you want to call it, a iconic church I don't know if you saw this, being turned from having the crosses taken down, and it was being turned into a mosque, essentially. And this is what we're seeing happen here in America today. What we're seeing is this forcible compliance, or this forcing of this agenda from our Judeo-Christian roots and heritage into this into something that we're not, and that is an Islamic nation. Now, Islam, of course, is being used as a tool, and I refer to the book Blood Moons by Mark Bills. He references something in here which I thought was astonishing. He writes, I like to ask people, and think about this because this does relate to what's going on worldwide, but in particular in America. He writes, I like to ask people, what was the difference between Hagmann of the Book of Esther and Antiochus of... I just lost my place here. Well, he writes, Hagmann was all about annihilation, wanting to kill every Jew, no matter what. Antiochus, on the other hand, was all about assimilation. And he writes, one of the great signs of the last days will be assimilation. For example, Chrislam, which is the merging of Christianity and Islam. This is what you see being promoted today. The Antichrist, his goal will also be assimilation. And you will be only annihilated, or you will only be annihilated if you don't assimilate. So it's either conform or die. Isn't it kind of interesting to take a look at the Islamic doctrine? You know, you either convert to Islam or pay the non-Muslim tax, or you can't live. I mean, that's essentially a tenet of Islam. And Islam is being used as a tool to usher in the New World Order. Now, and I like to say this, and I pound this home, hopefully, there are talented, brilliant writers out there who will point to Islam and say, this is a scourge on America in terms of demanding that we conform. Correct? Okay, that's true. But they stop at that point without going deeper, drilling deeper, and saying, well, wait a minute. Islam is also a tool of the New World Order. It's the mechanism by which the New World Order will be brought into existence, because we're seeing areas where we're seeing changes now to our ability to speak freely, to be critical of Islam. I'm not talking about hate speech here. I'm talking about actually quoting from the Quran and saying, okay, the Quran says essentially convert or die. Convert, pay this non-Muslim tax, or die. So what we're seeing is this gradual, and in some cases now this accelerated attack on free speech, where Islam is being used to usher in Sharia or Sharia law. So that's kind of an unnecessary, but Sharia is Islamic law, in to erode our rights to free speech. So what we're seeing is the loss of our freedoms granted to us by our Creator and delineated through the Bill of Rights, through our Declaration of Independence and Constitution, more appropriately, I should say, to be outspoken, to have freedom of speech. So where the intelligent writers, the people, the well-known people who have taken Islam and saying, look at what the Muslims are doing here in this country, while they're correct, they're not getting the bigger picture here. They're not seeing the larger picture. And I contend that the larger picture, if you don't go all the way, dig as deep as you can to see what the real agenda is, you're going to be, well, essentially stuck as a neocon, or, and I don't like to use that as a pejorative term, just basically a way of describing one's views. Okay, so this is what's taking place today. So what is taking place is the forced assimilation, the forced conversion. We must not only accept but embrace all other religions, and to make sure that we do, laws will be passed, the rulings will be made that soon we will not be able to speak against Islam. And that, of course, will set the stage for people being sent to prison, fined, whatever, for openly criticizing Islam. And at that point, we no longer have a constitutional republic or the freedoms that have been created by our constitutional republic. And that's what's taking place. And it's being done under the perception, or with the perception that we all have to get along. No,
yeah.
There's no compromise here.
And yesterday, there's an article we didn't get a chance to get to that is a good example of this. And Marine veteran is facing eviction over flying U.S. Marine Corps flags on apartment balcony. And as I said, this is an example of what you're talking about. Conform, and we have many of these. Things are so upside down. You have Fort Hood being attacked internally for the second time in 5 years, 2009 and then 2014, and you have the head of the Army testifying in front of Congress. No, the soldiers do not need to carry guns. This should not be an armed camp. Let the MPs handle this. I mean, basically, this latest shooting, and we touched on this a little bit, is another example. They're trying to play through or placate to a certain, anti-gun lobby, whatever it is. The soldiers, PTSD, mental health issues, anxiety, taking antidepressants, all the labels that they have been giving people, trying to show that. I mean, what does it say when your soldiers, your people of who are protecting this country, who've given their lives to protect this country, are not even allowed to carry guns to protect themselves in their own country?
Yeah, they're being told to shelter in place. Can you imagine the greatest military in the world being told, the soldiers being told at Fort Hood to shelter in place or hide under a desk? I mean, how insane is that?
Well, how would police officers react if they had to come into work and in the department had to check all their guns with the front desk and couldn't have their weapons on them while they were in the headquarters or the department, at the same time having something like a Fort Hood happen? We'll say in Los Angeles, the same police station, you had somebody, an officer, sneak a gun on or not check a gun and start shooting other unarmed officers in the department. That would not fly. That would not last. And this latest shooter it is come out and reported that he does not turn the gun on himself until he is confronted by somebody with a gun. And in each case, it shows somebody with a gun stopping. I mean, how many times have we heard somebody with a gun stopping one of these people trying to commit a mass shooting? Yeah, all common sense goes out the window, and you have neutered the military men and turned this nation and these military bases into gun-free zones and made them walking bullseye targets for any person who is deranged or any there's a lot of mind control topics and issues coming up with this latest shooter. Apparently he served 4 months in Iraq and it wasn't in a combat capacity. So you have to ask, obviously you don't have to be in a combat capacity to get post-traumatic stress syndrome. But what was it that was the real catalyst for this latest shooting? Was it something that is out there now, or is it something that we'll never get to the bottom of, like so many of these shootings?
Well, you know, when I was thinking about the recent Fort Hood shooting, folks, could this be? I don't. Using the term false flag has different connotations that I'm going for here, but could this be perhaps an incident that will create some sort of agenda to disarm the vets? And if you begin to disarm the veterans, and we see this taking place. I mean, look, Alex Jones has documented this very well, the disarming of American veterans. What are we doing? We could have a really big discussion on this. First of all, what in the world are we still doing where we're at in Iraq, Afghanistan, overseas? What are we doing there? Why do we have our personnel over there?
It's so convoluted now. You could get arguments to say we're not at war anymore.
No, I mean, I get that. Yeah, but you see, does this not smell or feel like an attack on our returning veterans? When you look at statistics, 22 veterans are committing suicide every day. How many are in treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder? We have created, and when I say we, this goes directly back to the Brzezinski, and we have to think that big. This Brzezinski agenda. This, of course, this was the most recent wars. Of course, George W. Bush in Iraq and Afghanistan. But if you look at the larger picture, the Brzezinski doctrine, this, we're at war with Russia, and of course, you go back to Orwell's 1984, we're always at war. But this is absolutely incredible what we're seeing in Fort Hood. I believe this latest incident at Fort Hood is going to be used in a manner in which veterans will be disarmed. And that's a huge step, because I can't think of any other way, Joe. I mean, and of course, there's the association with the psychotropic drugs. We know that. Ambien,
the SSRI drugs, yeah.
Right.
And Ambien was the headline on Drudge yesterday. But I really do not believe that is the... I mean, there has to be a lot of factors, or a single factor, whether it's mind control, whether... The fact that all these people, these mass shooters, have a history of using these type of drugs. I mean, there are so many people on these drugs in America, nonviolent people. And I'm not, saying that it's good or bad to be on these medications if you need them or whatnot, but how come it only comes up in these instances where there are these mass shootings, mass instances of violence, people of questionable backgrounds, time gaps that can't be explained, personnel affiliations with certain mind control type psychologists and things of that nature? There's too much of the circumstantial evidence that you were talking about earlier. There's too much of it out there.
Yeah, exactly. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't know whether you had a chance to, and if not, that's fine. We're going to be doing shows on this next week. I think it's this important. When we start talking about the things that are taking place, the things that we're seeing, for example, Nathan Leal yesterday talking about the messages contained within the Super Bowl halftime show, and of course the very famous London Olympics, where we saw this Illuminati ceremony take place. There are things that we're seeing all around us that are in it's mind control. The Tavistock Institute, that has its tentacles in many American corporations. The Tavistock Institute is a London-based institute, but so much of what we're seeing is an outgrowth from the Tavistock Institute and the people behind that institute and associated with that institute, the various tentacles that include the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission, the very people we're talking about, or that we often talk about, as the movers and shakers. It's so extremely important to identify the people and the groups, the organizations behind what we're seeing, this mass social engineering and mind control, because we are being subjected to mind control in many, many ways, from the smart meters through the it is an
electromagnetic frequency weapons that are being. I mean, we hear reports and stories from more emailers and callers and guests on this subject. From Russ Dizdar's Black Awakening, explaining and I was talking with somebody out of Texas, a former military psychologist, who talked about the dissociative or multiple personality disorder, and how the brain is manipulated with some of these different types of weapons. It's turned into a science that they've perfected, and understand how to turn a person into two people, where one hand doesn't know what the other hand's doing, and not in a good way. And it's scary, and you read Russ Dizdar's book, The Black Awakening, and the possibilities of how bad this could be if you think about a whole generation of programmed individuals. You talk about sleeper cells. That's the worst of the worst. It's downright scary when you think about it. But moving on here, getting to the Middle East and news out of John Kerry, what he's saying today is the U.S. is running out of patience with Israel over the Mideast peace deal.
Very, very important, folks.
And Secretary of State John Kerry said Friday Washington was evaluating whether to continue its role in the Middle East peace talks, signaling his patience with the Israelis and Palestinians was running out. They have a deadline of April 29th, and they said that the negotiations have catapulted into a crisis now that Israel is refusing to act on a previously agreed release of Palestinian prisoners and assurances that Palestinians would continue talks beyond the initial April deadline. They're saying that this is looking to be more convoluted, and the U.S. is not going to hold an interest in pushing this peace deal when you have the two countries that they're pushing towards peace not negotiating with each other or moving in that direction.
Folks, believe me, the peace process is really dead. End of story. John Kerry just is attempting to keep it alive. He's hovering, or he's tending to the death of the peace process as one would tend to a corpse, shall we say. A corpse, but trying to breathe new life into it. He's pushed on and is pushing on. The perspective of the peace process and of the situation in the Middle East is indeed grim. I don't think we can come back. I don't think we can walk anything back about this peace process. And Joe, you've been following this a lot. The peace process, at the request of U.S. peace envoy Martin Indyke, this past Wednesday night, a gentleman by the name of, I believe, Tzipi Livni, accompanied by Netanyahu's envoy lawyer, Molcho, I think I'm pronouncing that name right, met with the PLO chief negotiator, Saeb Erekat, who was accompanied by the head of the Palestinian intelligence services. Well, anyway, who are these people? Well, if you look, Livni is a pro-peace. She's pro-peace and conciliatory, has consistently made statements about trying hard for peace that are just absolutely infuriating both sides. But in this particular instance, this past week, she was actually pushed well beyond her own patience. There has been behind the scenes, there is so much discord that there's no walking this back. The Palestinians are holding fast. The Israelis are being painted into this terrific corner. It's just a very anyone talking about the peace process in the actual peace process, in what would logically be a peace process, is delusional. The United States, through Obama, through Kerry, they're insisting on dividing Israel. And of course, when we start talking about the division of Jerusalem itself, and that is being discussed and bantered about and being pushed forward despite this process as we would know it being dead, who cannot expect prophetic fallout from this? Anyone who would divide Israel, and especially divide Jerusalem, judgment will be harsh. Now, one can say, "Well, geez, that sounds like you're a Zionist," and this is not about. This is about dividing God's land. This is about, there's numerous scriptural references to dividing Israel and Jerusalem specifically. Folks, I think we're getting down to the wire with this.
And the Bible says after Israel would become a nation again, that it would not be forsaken again. It would not be torn down, split, and any of those who would involve themselves in such behaviors to do so would be receiving a judgment. And as we've noted in previous shows, especially more recently, the judgments have come quickly when people have even uttered expressions of dividing the land. But this time, and I know the audio from Tuesday with Stan was a little rough to say the least, but we talked about this and how this time there seems to be a lot of talk, and not that there's not judgment, but not like in Bush with the Marshall Plan or these other instances where our government has injected itself into this peace process. You'd see Katrina happen, or the BP oil spill, or all these other events that could be related almost, to a 24-hour period after people would open their mouths to talk about this. That judgment is not really been seen on a huge level or on a openness that it has in the past. So my question is there something big coming down the road? We know that the blood moons are going to be here. There was actually an article in USA Today yesterday talking about the blood moon eclipse on April 15th will be a special event, and being able to be viewed by Americans. It's actually a 2.5-minute video. I'll post it in the chat room, and folks who are listening to this via archive or not in the chat room, just search blood moon eclipse on April 15th as a special event. That's from yesterday, USA Today. We have a convergence of all these different things that are indicators of the Lord's plan, possibly, of times that we live in, things that we should be paying attention to. And Stan was very this Tuesday, and we actually had a couple requests if we could get him back on today. But he was very, not troubled, I would say, but concerned about people and their relationship with the Lord and their preparedness, physically, spiritually, mentally, for what is to come. And people need to understand that we live in times that things are changing so fast that anything now is possible, and it could come at any time, and we should not be surprised when it does come.
That's absolutely correct. And we're going to be getting more and more into Israel, the blood moons, and in fact, I'm going to have submit a request to Mark Biltz, the author of Blood Moons. I have the book. It was given to me at the Prophecy Conference by Mark Biltz, the author, and the science of the signs that are taking place with the blood moons. Folks, he makes a very compelling case for the things to be taking place as we look at God's calendar days and God's calendar years and the blood moons. And it's interesting, we saw people kind of freak out last year. Freak out, that might be too much of a loaded term, but be very concerned over the Mayan calendar. Remember that? The ending of the Mayan calendar? They thought it marked the end of time.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it didn't end. But and the reason why is that everyone has been looking at all of the wrong calendars. And think of the Magi in the Scriptures who are looking for that famous star in the east. They understood that something had been overlooked by all of the theologians for more than 2,000 years. They understood which one was the right calendar. And this is about God's calendar.
Yeah. And I want to say this. I found a book, and you saw this, for $2.50 while we were on our way back from Florida. And it's about this. It's about the star, the Gregorian star, and the people who were influential in creating the calendar and timeline system we're in now. And I have not opened it up to read it yet, but I'm looking forward to seeing what's in there. But things have been hidden from those who are, I'd say, spiritually blind, and the signs that are there for those who are spiritually awake, they could never. I mean, things are more clear now for people than they have ever been.
Absolutely. And folks, we're going to be taking your calls at 661-244-9839, 661-244-9839. We're going to be opening the phone lines, but one of the stories one thing that I do want to hit is this. I don't know how many people are aware of this or have been following this. Essentially, if you don't conform to this new politically correct moral code in this country, you cannot be a CEO of a major corporation. Now think about that. Joe and I we did work for a huge company, and we were faced with that decision ourselves. Basically, and of course I'm simplifying it, not really quoting, but you get the idea. We were told, look, if you are going to publicly stand up and say things like abortion is bad and take on these controversial, in quotes, controversial issues, you've got to make a choice. You can either be investigators for us, subcontractors for us, or we'll find somebody less controversial. Wow. That choice was easy. We made it in a leap of faith and never looked back. Essentially, that shut down our investigative business and suddenly thrust us merely as a non-professional talk show hosts as we are today. But think of today. Imagine yourself as being a young person in America today. What you believe about certain issues, that's going to determine how and where how high you're going to be able to go in the corporate world in your professional life. The day is quickly approaching when anyone that wants to have any measure of professional success in our society, you're going to have to conform. You're going to have to make a decision. You either conform to a certain process of thought, or you're going to be taken out of the running with any professional corporation. Example or Exhibit A. Mozilla, the browser.
Mozilla CEO.
Right.
He has resigned because of opposition to what? Gay marriage.
Yeah, it was discovered that he had donated $1,000 to support Proposition 8 back 6 years ago, back in 2008. He was essentially forced to step down after and think about this, after an online dating service urged a boycott of the company's web browser because of that donation.
Personal donation of a personal belief. The CEO of Mozilla Firefox resigning, as they say. But as you said, due to the lack of the conformity to the pro-homosexual agenda, over $1,000 donation is being forced out of one of the top internet companies in the country, in the world.
And listeners, let me tell you something. When we talk about the homosexual activists, the I don't even want to say gay rights activists, but the homosexual activists, when we talk about it on our programs like this, when we say homosexual unions are wrong, morally wrong, it's against the Bible. And we had breakfast 2 mornings ago with Pastor David Langford and his wife, great, fantastic people. And Pastor Langford was uncompromising and said, you cannot be you cannot adhere to Christian beliefs and accept abortion and homosexuality as normal. Now, I'm paraphrasing, of course, what he said.
And he went on to say, about people who call themselves Christians who embrace anti-biblical beliefs, that they're not being truthful with themselves. They're liars for whatever reason. And that's true. We cannot be Christians and be anti-scripture, anti-foundational. I mean, what the foundation of the Jesus has come to do and come to say. Now, that's not to say that we hate or will act in a manner that is unloving or unkind to another human being for the way they are, but you're not going to embrace that or make yourself a part of that because of the way society perceives you or what they feel is right. We're told that we're in need to come out of this world in the way that this world believes, and we can see today more than ever that how this world is saying, well, you're not going to distance yourself from it, because and this, look at what it says about the mark of the beast. Distancing yourself from the ideals of this world and being a part of it is becoming increasingly more and more. You're not being able to do that, and if doing so, you're becoming, as in the case of the CEO, an example, or you're going to be stripped of your ability to live as a regular citizen.
Well, in the case of Mozilla Chief Executive Brendan Eich stepping down, in that there was an author, and I'm not even sure who to attribute this to, but an author wrote in a column that he broke the politically correct moral code of the thought Nazis, so he must pay. It didn't matter, by the way, that 52% of the voters in California actually voted in favor of Proposition 8, and of course what that means, it's against the legalization of homosexual unions, of homosexual marriage. And with him, with Mr. Brendan Eich, it doesn't matter that this happened 6 years ago. It just happened to come out now. It doesn't matter that he was doing a fantastic job in his position. Homosexual activists applauded this move. And folks, I will say this, and I guarantee you this. There are a few other subjects aside from when we start getting into discussion of Sabood, the identity of Obama, and the cover-ups relating to that. We get a lot of emails that are, shall we say, threatening in nature. But a close second, or perhaps number one in a different venue, is the hateful email, the threatening email we get when we talk about this subject of homosexuality and our statements that it's antithetical to our Christian beliefs, and that triggers something like such a rabid response. Mm-hmm. If I would I couldn't post some of the emails that I've gotten. In fact, this is now, I don't know, several weeks ago, a woman wrote in, and it was such a vitriolic email. She had actually donated $10 to our cause. She said, I'm a loyal listener, donated $10 to our radio program, and went on this. I've never seen anything like it. It was an incredible. It's not even a rant. It was a threat. I mean, threats and the hatred, the rabid hatred, was there. So I ended up returning the $10 and saying, please don't listen anymore, because I just couldn't handle it. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
And I don't know where this came from in our studio, but before our trip, I came across a book called the Queen James Bible.
That came from as a reference on a gift from. In fact, I should have told you this show, but that came from Marianne. Sent it to us as a gift for a reference.
I mean, I figured it was as much as a reference or just to show you, to get an understanding. But I've heard of it. I think I've heard of the Queen James Bible, but I just couldn't believe it. And I started reading, and the whole Bible is dedicated to making 8 scriptural changes to accept or to blot out the true references of man laying with man as they do women, or homosexuality, or the practice of it. The whole Bible, 8 scriptural changes to erase the memory of the way the Lord said to live and conduct ourselves.
Well, and this goes back to, I had a nice off-air conversation with John B. Wells today. And off-air, and I think he might have mentioned this on air as well, but we were talking about the communist goals that were read into the congressional record back in 1963. And the communist planks, which are being used to usher in the one world system of governance, and of course being used to assail the sovereignty and the heritage, the fabric, moral and spiritual fabric of our country. But we were talking about the various specific goals being accomplished, and the destruction of the nuclear traditional family is absolutely part of this. And as we look back, remember the first hour I was talking about the 1960s and why the context back then is so important, is because back then the full weight of the social engineering, really via the communist elements in our government in preparation for the one world order, were the strongest. And of course we saw this cultural revolution. But where was it from? Where did it emanate from? Was it a grassroots cultural revolution? No. It began within our government. It began, you can take a few steps back and again point to the Tavistock Institute. You can go back into the World War II era with the Nazis but to bring it home here, it was an agenda of our Western intelligence, of the CIA, of the mind control, the social engineering of our intelligence groups. That's why the context, the historical context of what we talk about is so important. And I think that we need to keep these discussions on an intellectual basis.
And we also need to, each individual person has to do the legwork and research by reading the scriptures themselves. There, as it says, there are not multiple private interpretations. There is one interpretation, and it's the right one, and it's the only one we're to go by. And we cannot get that understanding if we are not spiritually healthy and have our relationship with the Lord intact. It's just not going to happen. And sadly, we see people believing what others say rather than doing the legwork and finding out what the Lord is saying to each one of them. Or the Hagmann and Hagin Report this Friday, April 4th, 2014. We're going to go right to the phones. And if you want to call in, 661-244-9839 is the number to call. We're going to go to North Carolina first, 704 area code. Welcome to the Hagmann and Hagin Report.
Hello, Joe and Doug. This is Sam Miller. How are you?
Doing great.
Sam Miller. Thanks for calling, Sam.
This is the best way. I'm a hound dog, buddy. He's from Pennsylvania. That's the best way.
I love you, bud.
I
love you. It's great to hear you. What's up, my friend?
Me too. Well, first, as I was listening to your travail, telling the story about trying to hook up at the IHOP with Pastor Langford, I cringed because I could have professionally chauffeured you there in the speed of time, because I live in Charlotte. I was probably a stone's throw away from where you guys were staying. So I felt for you and your grief, and being someone in the past that has been perpetually late, and I don't like being that way. I've turned a new leaf, so I know how you felt. So that's just an anecdote. But and this is what I'm about to say is first the gratitude that on behalf of myself that does the events video production as an affiliate to PITN Ministry, and to from direct communication to Bob Ulrich, the director of operations at the ministry, who I was fortunate enough to introduce you to, and Gary Stearman, and
yes,
they're just humbled by how that you supported through your broadcasting exposure this event, and totally unsolicited. And I would like, on Bob's behalf, so that we could begin discussions next week, to invite you and Joe to get in your mind's eye so we could design something that a venue you'd feel comfortable with, so that you could have some sort of presentation in the end of July at the Pikes Peak Conference in Colorado Springs this year.
Well, wow, we're humbled by that.
Your tens of thousands of listeners, it's just I wanted to get this started. I know I saw how people responded to. We all saw how people responded to your integrity and character and Christian walk. People that had never met you and wanted to at Colorado or at Orlando, and we would. I think Bob was, as soon as you can have time this coming week, to work something together. And I know. Well, first of all, I put Post-its on the wall, and it's up to the Lord and the Holy Spirit whether they stick and make sense. But Bob and I have discussed. Steve Quayle is a very strong friend and affiliate of the Prophecy News Ministry. They've had him in and interviewed him, and they support his books and stuff. And you're part of that same family and fellowship, that even in your mind's eye, because you guys are, I like it because you're regular guys, and you're one of the most followed unprofessional interviewers in podcasting America, and that's what we all love. You're so transparent, and you love the Lord, and at the same time you're of the belief, both of you, that God didn't invent us to throw our brains in the garbage can as we pursue His principles and search the truth. So my hat's off to you. And
well, thank you.
Yeah, as you guys have coffee over the weekend, and you and Joe come up with some brainstorming ideas, my thoughts are we'll get a conference call going. And Bob's a very receptive kind of person. And I mean, I even envisioned, because you're so close to Steve, wouldn't it be great if you have Steve, and I think, isn't Pastor Langford on with Steve as a regular on your show a lot?
Oh, yes.
You could have them, the four of you could have a panel discussion, as part of a segment of the conference. That's just my popcorn idea. And,
well, you know what, Sam? We have a lot of people listening tonight, and I'm sure a lot of people will be listening to the rebroadcast of this, the archive of this. And it's like to put it to the listeners, I mean, as well, if they would like to see something like this take place, certainly we would we would be honored, humbled to do whatever it would take to get the word out. Sam, time is so short, and we don't know how much time we do have. So we want to do everything we can, humanly possible, to help others, to bring people, to inform and educate. That's our only goal, So if this would work to that end, and listeners, you're a part of this. Would you be thinking of something in the line of, excuse us, listeners, we're just talking now, Sam and I. Would you be thinking in terms of something like an open venue where the people would be in attendance, or would this be a closed DVD or closed?
If you have the comfort factor, is to have this, like the old radio days, where like Woebegone, they go on location, they fill the theater,
sure.
And they have a rate. Oh, this would be the same way. We could kind of do simultaneous if you wanted to live broadcast your radio, and at the same time we could offer video/video streaming of the thing.
Okay,
so
that would be cool.
As part of, and it's a little smaller venue, and the rooms aren't as expansive in Colorado at the Marriott as they were in Orlando. Those rooms are, I think there's about 1,100 attendees. We had to cap it last year, and the main room held between 650 and 750 people. And then the next size room down was about, I think about 160. And then we had one or two other smaller rooms. So I didn't mean to discuss. I did mean to get a hold of you. I apologize for
this is fine.
Discussing this over the air. But I think, like you said, there's so many hearts that you've touched out there. They feel like part of your extended family. And like Bob Ulrich said today, he says, maybe there's something you can think of that you and Joe and your listener base that would play well in Peoria, in this case in Colorado Springs, but something we've never done before, and the Holy Spirit will inspire all of us.
Exactly, and I encourage the listeners to weigh in on this. Certainly, if the listeners would be open to doing, to attending something like this. I don't know. Maybe I can. I'm worried that we might only get 5 or 6 people there. So. No.
The reception in Orlando, I'm not worried about that. I want this to build several people. From that point, it's just a joyous opportunity to be led to you guys through a Christian brother in Asheville, North Carolina, and I had never heard of you until maybe a year or so ago, and then I come to find out you're from Erie. I grew up in southern PA near Chambersburg, and I used to travel near Erie back in the mid 80s to early 90s in sales, because there's plastic companies that made plastic components, and I would travel up to Erie, Pennsylvania.
Sure, I remember you and I talking about this at the conference. Interesting. It's a small world, isn't it, when we really come down to it? And Sam, I'll just say this in closing, and we will be in touch here, if not at the end of the weekend, here in a short period of time, because I think that I would leave it up to I wouldn't. I mean, I would like to get input from the listeners if this is something that there might be interest in doing. Of course, we could do that, because there's a lot of information that people need to know, that people are asking for, and boy, I'll tell you, if we can help people, let's rock and roll with the idea. Let's go with it.
Normally these, are about hour sessions like we had in Orlando, but and ultimately, it's the ministry, Bob and Gary, to bless things. But I could even see maybe on a Friday evening or Saturday evening, we modify your show or whatever it is and try to conform to those times. So maybe it's 8 to 10. We do it live streaming and live radio right from the hotel complex in the big room, and you do what you're great at, which is leading panel discussions.
That sounds great. You're going to have to have somebody in there to operate the controls, because I keep pushing buttons and doing weird things. So.
Just tell us what you want us to do. That's so that you can just flow in the Holy Spirit. That's the main thing. And thanks for letting me take a few moments of airtime.
Sure.
Look forward to getting to know Joe better as well. And we pray the Lord blesses you and your family and what you stand for, and continue to lead us into new areas of insight we hadn't known before.
Sam, God bless you. Thank you so much for that. We'll be talking soon. And thanks for that idea.
Such a blessing.
Thanks. Have a great
All right,
look forward to listening to the rest of the show. Bye-bye.
All right, sir.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, tremendous man that we met in Orlando. Absolutely tremendous. Missed meeting him in Charlotte. Our time was so limited. I mean, we were so hamstrung with time.
We had like 12 hours in North Carolina on the way back, if that, I believe, if I remember correctly. So, no, that was a fantastic call and something that we'll have to talk about. And
the thing here, and I don't want to belabor the point, but the thing here, Joe, is what can we do? And folks, you're a part of this. What can we do physically? What more can we do? What more should we be doing to help others, to help you, and to provide information, and to make you part and parcel to this? Maybe it's just as simple as having something like this, and you being able to bring a family member or a friend who's on the fence, or who's not fully awake or aware, and to go, because there are so many people in that position, and certainly when events take place. Look, we're looking at headlines today. Stocks spooked after hitting record highs, or after hitting, not record highs, but after hitting highs. You're looking at potential the financial calamities. You don't want, in my view at least, you don't want to be in a position of having a lack of knowledge when the stuff hits the fan. So things like this. So if we can help, indeed, let's do it. Thank you. All right. Interesting call, indeed. Also, I want to mention this from from the Caravan at Midnight interview as well. Folks, do check Butter D. Zillion's blog, because that does correspond, from our first hour, that does correspond with the topic of Subud. It's from another perspective, the Fuddy plane incident and all the mischief that went on with the images and the video and the Fuddy incident. Butter D. Zillion, of course, if you check on HomelandSecurityUS.com, you'll find a link somewhere there to her blog, and excellent researcher, fantastic information, stuff you need to know.
All right, moving on to the next call here. Area code 805. We're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And they dropped off as soon as we picked up. 805, if you want to call back, we'll take your call as soon as we see it. We're going to go to 719. 719.
As soon as we see it, we're going to go to 719. 719.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi. How are you guys?
You're on the air. Very well. How are you?
Good. It sounds like you guys had a good trip. I'm glad you enjoyed the conference. And by the way, I support your show, and I never want you to stop doing what you're doing. And I want you to continue to support the Bible and tell the truth.
Well, thank you.
That's all I had to say.
Well, that's great. We do what we can, and I was talking with my wife about this, folks, and it's really something when you hit a topic that is, whether you're investigating as we are certain things like Subud and the mechanism, the evil mechanism, and I say evil because it is, that is present, or whether you're talking about homosexuality and the sin of homosexuality and those who embrace it yet call themselves Christians. There's always this contention, and if we're feeling it, I know you're, maybe not you personally, but the people, their families are feeling it. And
no. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it personally. I'm crazy, remember?
That's right.
This
You're
is crazy, Donna. I'm certifiable.
That's right, Donna.
I mean, my whole family thinks I'm nuts, but you know what? I really don't care anymore. And if the truth is the truth, the Bible says that. And
that's right.
If the Bible says it, it's true.
That's my thing. Yep.
Oh, and the other thing is, you guys got to come to Pikes Peak. You've got to come to Pikes Peak. I can drag a family member in because everybody thinks I'm nuts, and it'd be great if Steve was there and Pastor Langford. Oh, what a blessing! And Rick Wilds had a guest on. I think it was the first. It had to do with he speaks several languages. I don't want to quote because I can't remember off the top of my head. However, he does not support the rapture theology. And he rattles off stuff. I can't even go there. The guy was so much more. My brain's just got sometimers. Sometimes I remember stuff. Sometimes I don't. People will be talking. I go, wait, that's in John. But I can't tell you where it is in John. So my sometimers kicks in when I'm not good with the rote memory stuff. However, come to Pikes Peak, guys.
We'd love to, but to be honest, I don't even think I've thought that far ahead, with the traveling to Florida, and then we're going to Montana to the White Stone conference.
Well, you got to come through here.
Yeah, that's something I'm going to have to start thinking about, I guess. We're going to have to...
Colorado, southern Colorado is the Bible Belt, or at least what's left of the Bible Belt. You go north, and it's all the trendies and the New Agers, and of course, we call Boulder the People's Republic of Boulder, but I didn't say that. Did I say that? Yes, I did. Okay, well, I did. Anyway, I'll let you guys go. I just wanted to call in because when I heard that woman sent you that awful letter and gave you $10 and you sent it back, I thought, well, gosh, I support them, and I don't, everybody sinned. People just think you have to wash up and come to Jesus. No, you come to Jesus. He convicts you. You change. We all have sin. If we open my closet, boy, we need a crane to keep the rattling of all the bones I have in there. But that's the whole point of becoming a Christian, I think, is doing the Christian walk isn't easy. It's hard.
Right.
It's constant. And I kind of akin it to people that are drug addicts. Oh, no, I know exactly what you're going through. You're trying to fight that, and I'm trying to fight everything else in my head.
Yeah, and as you said, it's constant.
Guys. It is. It's constantly. But keep up the good work. We love you out here. At least I do, anyway. And look forward to your show. And I'll continue supporting you, and you continue telling the truth.
Oh.
Amen,
God bless
brothers.
You, Donna. Thank you. Amen, indeed. All
Glad
right.
you called. Thanks, Donna. You have a great weekend.
Bye.
Take care.
You know what, Joe? We're going to have to fill up the tour bus, get the roadies together, and wait. What's wrong with that? No.
Just like you said earlier, you're not a fisherman. You can't catch fish. I remember you couldn't catch fish if they jumped in the boat. It was hard for you to keep a hold of them back when we had that little boat that he used to take us out on to go fishing. But
yeah.
And that it's the same way with Sam said it. It is unprofessional in a way, the way we do things, and I take that as a compliment because we're not professionals as far as media and interviewing and radio is concerned. But at the same time, I don't want to be, because with that, professionalism seems to come and this isn't for all people, an arrogance or a pride or a know-it-all kind of attitude. At least that's what's projected in the mainstream media, whether it's TV or radio.
Well, you had mentioned a boat, and I look at what we're doing now very much like when I first got that. It was a small boat. Long story how I got it, but it was never boated before, never had a boat before, and it was I think a 16-footer. It was a small boat. You trailer it and put it in the water, and no one ever told me that the boat had a, for lack of a better word, a plug, in the bottom of the boat that you're supposed to put in before you put it in the water. So I couldn't understand why my boat was sinking as soon as I put it in the water. I had, I was ankle deep in water, and the back of the boat kept sinking, and I'm thinking, wow, this is really strange. And then the guy that was putting in the boat on the other side of the, whatever you call that dock thing, saw my absolute terror on my face, or thinking, man, I got a bad boat, or something happened to my boat. He said, did you put that, I can't remember what it's called, did you put the plug in? And I just said, what plug? And of course he was laughing, and he walked over and gave me a hand. So that's about as professional as you can get. And of course the bilge pump, the small pump that was in the bilge was working. So it all turned out well. So that shows the professionalism behind, or the lack thereof, in many cases, behind what we do.
All right, we're going to take another call. I do not see 805 back on hold. We're going to go to 605. 605, you're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagin Report. What's on your mind tonight?
Hey, guys, it's Laurel from South Dakota. How you both doing?
Very well. South Dakota.
I'm the one that sent you pictures of my German Shepherd, Doug, a while back.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you. I know who you are.
Hey, and as a personal note, if your dog is still suffering from arthritis, I think I sent you an email on this. My vet is an acupuncturist, and it was like one treatment, and it was like night and day. So I would suggest you asking your vet or look around and find one that's a good acupuncturist, and the treatments are pretty reasonable. But, I mean, she was, she's got really bad arthritis in her back and her hips. And, I mean, she was up and running around that day. So it's, and then you're not giving them the steroids, and I don't know exactly what you're, giving them. But I wanted to pass that on as a personal note. But you were asking, what can we do? And it sounds like this is request night. I am now the state coordinator for Operation American Spring up here in South Dakota. And I would like to know how we can go about getting some time, maybe it's 30 minutes, maybe it's 15 minutes, having some of our media people get online and just help spread the word about what we're trying to do starting May 16th in Washington, D.C., and maybe dispel some rumors and myths and things like that, because, this is the mission that Colonel Riley has started, that he's asking for 10 million people to show up and, help, take back our country in a peaceful, public way. So I just wanted to find out, I think Texas Rose has contacted you about, if we can get online or get with you to schedule some time. I don't know where you guys are standing with that, but I'd sure like to be able to have your venue to get the word out, because that's the thing that a lot of people just don't know about it. And we're just trying to get the message out.
It's interesting you brought that up, because a lot of people have asked us, well, where do you stand on American Spring, on this initiative? Yeah. And frankly, the questions that we have posed to certain people about this event have not really been adequately answered. And I'm being forthcoming with you. Okay, now that's not to say that there's any type of, it's not to say it's deliberate. I'm sure
it seems like there's a level of mischief along with. I mean, we haven't done our due diligence in researching it, but it seems that people are using it.
And that's, I'm hearing different things because I'm listening, because John B. Wells had Colonel Riley on. I don't know if you guys have had him on yet or not. I don't think so.
No, we haven't.
But we're also, I'm actually one of the, you may end up getting me talking about it, because I'm actually doing some of the radio interviews now too, because, we're trying to get the word out. So if I could send you an email or something and get linked up to have you, give us your questions. Let us help resolve those issues, because, there is a lot of misstatements out there. There's some confusion. Like I said, this is going to be peaceful. We are going unarmed. I know I've heard that, well, what happens when somebody shoots? Well, unfortunately, if somebody shoots, it's going to be the government shooting. and I'm going. I just made my reservations today, so I'm just feeling so strongly about this because we all sit back and we talk about it. I listen to your show and we all talk about what's wrong, and everybody goes, "Well, I wish somebody'd do something about it." Well, guess what? There's 3 of us right here that can do something about it, and I'm to that point where if we don't try, we failed. We've got to try. And and there's so much that even if you don't want to go, even if you can't go, I'm financially strapped and I'm praying and I'm getting a financial blessing. I'm going, but they've got a prayer warrior group out there that to help surround us in prayer for people traveling, for people while we're there in D.C. Because as we know, without God we will fail, but with God, who knows what we can accomplish while we're there. And
exactly.
So, and I think you can kind of hear some of my passion because I just feel like, at least I can look God in the eye and go, God, at least I tried. I didn't just sit there and send another Facebook posting and, all this kind of stuff, which is important. That education process is also important. The prayers are important because, the prepping is important. But let's give, let's try to take this country back. It's not the government. It's not our system of government. It's the people in our government that need to be replaced.
Exactly.
We've got a wonderful government, and I know, it's huge. We've got a huge problem.
Exactly.
Look at the political system. We've got to change the whole way we vote if we're going to, do anything. But, we've got to start somewhere. So, like I said, if I could send you an email or something to get you hooked up with who you need to talk to, because I think, like I said, she goes by the name Texas Rose. She's our PR media person.
I will search my inbox.
Okay.
For any
because she sent something. It'd be about 2 weeks ago or so, because I talked to her, and believe it or not, they were looking for some women to get on and talk, as well as it's a bunch of guys going, and it's like, no, it's not. There's a lot of female patriots out there that, love this country too. And so she said, and I said, boy, you guys have such a broad audience that we can get even 15 minutes to get people to say, hey, go look up Operation American Spring. Do your own research. Make your own decision. See if this falls in line with how you believe and how you feel and if you can be there. And, they're asking, if you can't make it on May 16th, we're not, this is not a one-day event. This is not a one-day rally. I'm signed up for 12 days. I'm going to stay there for at least 12 days. And so, if you can't go then, he's actually, Colonel Riley's come up with a schedule based on your last name when you show up for a 3-day interval. Because, just look what, what was it, the Egyptian people did, and look what they're doing in Thailand right now. This is not going to be solved overnight, but we've got to show up, because I think you guys have had several people on, and I think you've even alluded to it. They fear us.
Yes,
it's time for us to stand up. They do. They fear us, and it's time for us to take that power and go do something about it and get our country back on track.
Now we've had a lot of listeners contact us asking us, and this is a legitimate question, is what you're doing, is this the right thing to do? And I have to claim a level of ignorance here, because I don't know what fully your objectives are. And
my understanding is a lot of this is going to be, as you could imagine, we're going to learn about it when we get there. It's kind of like we're holding our cards close to our hand right now, so the details. But the overall mission is to have the corrupt politicians, starting in the executive branch, and then some of our key senators and congressmen that we know have created criminal acts, have them arrested and, basically start criminal procedures. The rest we are going to hopefully put enough pressure on to say, hey, I think I'm going to resign. And so that's kind of where we're going, and they've set it up that how we'll do an interim, the Speaker of the House will become the interim president, and so they've got some interim steps involved, but it basically is trying to dismantle or pull out the most corrupt, but knowing that almost everyone, my personal belief, every one of those politicians should be replaced. Just start clear.
Well, I personally, look, I think we need a fire hose, a big fire hose, to get rid of everybody and start anew. As you said, and I would reiterate this because I think this is an important point. I think our system of government, our constitutional republic as it was established, is not the problem. It's the people in the government that are the problem. And I would like, just for my benefit, but more so for the benefit of our listeners, to understand precisely, hearing it from, I don't want to say the horse's mouth. I just did, but okay.
Yeah.
Hearing it from the planners.
We'd love to have, we'd love to, if you want to schedule some time for Colonel Riley, we'll make that available. But there's just so much. Like right now, I'm looking for, I'm pretty much filling every position in South Dakota because there's about 1 million of us that live here, and it's so spread out, and of course I'm a Texas transplant up here, so I don't have that many contacts. But we're looking for ham operators because we're trying to set up a communication system because our biggest weapon is going to be media. It's Twitter, it's going to be cell phones, it's going to be, video cameras, and us, because I think we'd all say it's a safe bet that Fox or any of the other alphabet media groups will not even cover this. They'll probably turn the cameras off again like they did for the biker rally. And so we're trying to establish our own media network so we can get the word out to the American people of what's going on so they can see this happening.
Okay.
And so, we need people like that. We need ham operators that will be back at home or maybe that can go or, that type of stuff. We're looking for people that are willing to open up their houses to us, open up your houses to people traveling from California there. There's so much everybody can do if we can just pull together. And, so even if it's not, but I ask everybody, just go look. And then if you guys could pull together some questions, we can certainly get them to the right people and get those answered. Because, time is of the essence.
well, yes. I mean, considering that you're talking, a month and a few days from now. And, I'll say this. I did speak with a couple of people at the conference about American Spring. Again, these people were not informed as to the events or the objectives and what have you. All they were looking at was, okay, you've got a bunch of people meeting or a bunch of people descending upon Washington. Their questions were pretty much consistent. What do you hope to accomplish? And not only what, but how. So these questions, I believe, need to be answered for our listening audience, and I think our listening audience would be very interested in hearing the answers from the people who are planning this event. Not to give away we certainly, it would be the wrong thing to do to give away your playbook, shall we say.
Yeah, because you understand that. I mean, and of course they're listening to our, I mean,
sure they are.
No offense, it's like every time, like last night listening to the show, I went, oh, not again, These kids they're like juveniles, it's like, this is getting old. Would you just stop it,
Yes, and hopefully you can hear the difference in audio of people today. But anyway, so yes, we must, and I believe it's imperative. Time is of the essence. So definitely, let's connect.
Okay. And so you are getting my email. So I'll copy Rose on it, and I'll put in the title Laurel Operation American Spring or something like that to let you flag it.
Great.
and then we'll hook you up with whoever you need. And I really appreciate it. And the whole thing is get the word out. We if we can just get the word out.
Okay.
And have people go research it and see if it, if it's what they can, if it's in their, comfort zone, or if that's what they see as a good thing to do, or, But I don't want to hear everybody say, "Oh, you can't do it. You won't be able to make it work." I refuse to hear that negativity. We have to try.
It's going to be a very we collectively are facing a very formidable foe in terms of the criminal element within our government. But to do nothing is unconscionable. To do the wrong thing, however, is, oh boy,
Yeah,
so
I know.
That's why we need to have you on.
Okay. Well, we'll do. And listen, I appreciate. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say that's why, because I can almost hear people saying, "Well, this is the wrong thing to do. You're assembling these people, and they become targets, and who knows what could happen, and it could go sideways, and this and that. And what about the leadership? Is the leadership, perhaps compromised? Is it decentralized enough where there's an argument between having like a single leader versus kind of like the Tea Party in its theory. In theory, the Tea Party, where it's decentralized enough where one person cannot poison the entire well. That type of thing. So it's imperative that people understand, Americans understand what you're trying to do. So we will get that done, and I think it's a service to our listeners that we need to do this. And indeed.
And if I could share, if they would go online and look, type in OperationAmericanSpring.org, O-R-G. That's the main website, and the front homepage has the open letter from Colonel Riley, and then you can go in, click, and find your state group, and find all kinds of forum discussions there.
Very good.
And you can post any question you want there. So I appreciate your time, sirs. And God bless you both.
Thank you.
God bless you. Take care.
Hey, listen. If you guys end up not going, I can be your correspondent there while I'm there.
We would take you up on that.
Okay.
We at this point we're trying to figure out what we're doing tomorrow.
Yeah, I know. Well, you're going to Colorado. It sounds like too, but
Well, I'm not.
Yeah, I know. And I thought, oh
cow.
God, and here I am calling you up now too.
Well,
this is
fine.
But anyway, I do appreciate the time and the airtime, so I will send you that email tonight. Thank you both.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
God bless you too.
Bye-bye.
Some great calls tonight, and interesting. That's something we're going to have to look into, something that we know is coming up, and we have to do our research on. And I appreciate that call because I've heard this described in a different way than we have before. So, no, that was a good call, and thank you. 573, we're coming to you next. 573, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
The White Hat's one. Yeah. You have
573?
You'll know what I'm saying. Hello?
Hello.
Hi, how are you? Gentlemen,
doing good.
The White Hat's won, so congratulations. This has been quite a past 24 hours for me. There are some YouTube videos you guys need to look at that are very important, and there's several, and I want your listening audience to hear them. The first one is the CIA hit - Curious George Revealed. You will find out that George Bush Sr.'s name is really George Scherf, and he's pictured in a family photo with him and what I believe is his brother, Preston. And you'll notice to the right there's a little blonde-headed woman, a little older than this George, and her name is Dorothy Walker in this picture.
Okay.
Now, these were Nazis, plain and simple. This goes back to 1942. President Kennedy played a very heroic, very, very selfless act for the babies of 1963, of which I'm a member. And You'll understand Chernobyl. You'll understand everything. God was there, and he laid down a gauntlet, and he said, no more babies. And he did that with Kate and Will's baby, and he's pretty pissed off at Elizabeth. I can tell you that right now. Princess Diana, she had something to do with this, too. She was like the Queen of Hearts. And you guys are going to find out so much from these films. This was really an emotional past 24 hours, all these signs. It turned out I think I was a remnant, and I got showed these things. And this came very hard for me. I lost a son due to this stupid drug war with this big pharmakia in 2007. He was 19 years old. And every American in every world, anybody, every person on the world has had a personal battle with Satan. And that'll be fine. You'll understand that. I had the Holy Spirit in me the whole past 24 hours. And you will understand exactly why this is so important to me and to the world. This was a new paradigm. The new paradigm shift, I believe, it happens at midnight tonight. When the sun comes up in the morning, there is going to be a huge paradigm shift. And everybody's going to know it. This is so important. I am calling from Missouri, from a small northeast Missouri town, and we've all been hit hard. We've been given these so-called cosmic signs, and I can tell you where I was yesterday, that was my reality. And our whole thing of reality is going to change. And this is truly amazing. Humanity won. Humanity won, and there are going to be some earth changes that look like that this is going to change the world. If I can finish it, I'm sorry, Doug. What?
No, go ahead and continue.
Okay. All right. The next one is, it says it's Eric with E-R-I-K, Orion, O-R-I-O-N, dash, the Bush Nazi connection. And then it says TJA episode, number 25, February the 21st of 2011. Everybody's going to kick themselves in the butt that they did not see these things because they've been on YouTube for a while. And I just can't believe it. Just everything kind of fell into place yesterday, and I've seen it. So the next one is called Peter LaVinda talks to Freedom Central at the Secret Space Program Conference. And then there was some John Denver stuff on there from Sunshine on My Shoulders. That was a big sign. The next one was Lost Walt Disney UFO documentary, full uncut version, 2013, HD. And I'm going to tell you right now, you will understand what Walt Disney did. He was not the bad guy that we were thinking about in the Illuminati. He really held up. And our military guys, boy, those World War II vets, they really came through. Where all of this came through with me was like I got to tell you, it was the number 8. And we're taught that, that's a satanic number, that's a satanic number. Oh, you can't do it. Well, that turns out to be what this, key was. For me, it was an esoteric type thing. And, you'll understand because I'll keep going, but Walt Disney played a big part. The military did play a big part. Everybody came through on this one. The next one is called New Paradigm, Disclosure Shocking UFO Documentary, 2012.
Okay.
And
I'm going to stop you there. Oh, one more. Go ahead.
The last one is Scorpions, Wind of Change, Moment of Glory. And you'll understand it all then. That's all I can say.
Just in a sentence, if you can tell me, what are you getting at? What is the...
this has a lot to do
what is the paradigm shift what is the paradigm shift you're referring to? You said something about waking up in the morning and it's...
I was told by watching these videos, with no doubt, that there is something... Disneyland used to have a place called Future World or something like that. I can't remember what it was. It was really little. I was there when I was 7, and it was a really neat thing. And you'll understand all this. Because everything throughout the past 50 years has just been made... It all has... Einstein's theory comes into this. Fire plays a big part. laser plays a big part. You'll understand it all when you see him. And
okay. Well, very good.
So I thank you so much. You guys have done a great job. And L.A. Marzulli, Steve Quayle, Pastor Langford, everybody. We won. So I can't thank you. You guys really won some crowns this weekend. Thank you. This past 24 hours.
I'll get that.
Thanks for the call.
Okay.
Thanks for the references to the videos. We'll check those out. You have a great weekend.
And this will affect you too. So it affects everybody on Earth.
Well, thank you for the information.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
You have a great weekend. Take care.
God bless.
Did you get your other line there?
One ringy dingy. You know, sorry about that, folks. Let's
try and throw one more call in here.
Yeah.
Where did this call go here? 407. 407, we're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagman and Hagman Report.
Hey, good evening, guys. It's Al from Orlando. How you guys doing tonight?
Hey,
Al. We were unable to go to that burger place that you mentioned. I'm kicking myself for it, Al.
And ladies and gentlemen, we met Al down in Orlando.
Yeah, it was an awesome conference. I was looking for you guys all weekend. I didn't think it was going to happen, and I turned around and saw you guys in the coffee shop. So
we were hiding from you.
Yeah, I had even asked Paul McGuire's son if he had seen you guys, and he was like, "Man, you just missed them. They were here sitting with us for like an hour." I was like, "Man, I keep missing them every turn," you know. So I finally caught up with you guys, and it was pretty cool. So.
You know what, Al? I got to tell you, it was great meeting you, and it was great meeting everybody. But I really enjoyed meeting and talking with you, and you're a great guy, and I want to thank you for being a listener. But my goodness, hopefully I didn't break your camera when you took a picture, but.
Oh no, man! It was a great picture. I'm actually I know I got Joe's information. I'll maybe send it to his phone or something like that. Maybe he can get it that way. But on the flip side, I guess the conference was great. It's the first time actually going to something like that. You know, I had so many friendly people, and you know, I felt like it was awesome. You know, I passed out a lot of cards, and I kicked myself in the butt because I sat and talked to Paul McGuire in line. At the coffee place. I'm going to tell a story, and he actually cut the line. It was a huge line, and he walked up, and he's like, "Oh man, what am I going to do?" And he's like, kind of looking around, and he's like, "You know, I'm just going to do it." He just went for it. He just went up, and the Starbucks lady was cutting her eyes at him, and it was pretty funny. He came back and started talking to us, and he said he had told you guys that that you guys were hiding out, and you know, he was supposed to meet you guys, but you guys didn't come, and so. It was pretty fun.
Well, actually,
so it was pretty cool.
Actually, we had a meeting with him on Sunday morning, and the meeting actually did take place, but it was interesting. He got sidetracked. We got sidetracked, and we ultimately met 10 minutes afterwards. But it was we met with him for about an hour and a half after.
Yeah, I knew it. I seen Terry Cook's in there. He was talking to Terry Cook while me and you guys were in there talking and stuff. So
yes.
Yeah, like I said, I kicked myself in the butt because I met both of you guys, and you know, I didn't hand you guys one of my cards, you know, and you know, I just think about that. I'm like, man, what was I thinking, you know? So anyway,
send me information.
Yeah, you can text it or email. Either way, yeah, definitely get that information to us.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
be
great.
I think it was one of the more interesting ones that I've seen. I mean, all of them were great. I've seen Paul McGuire. You know, it was awesome. Brent, I think his name was Brent Miller. He did one, and he was talking about this city that was underwater, like 20 miles off the coast of Japan. That was like, you know, on the bottom of the ocean has a pyramid that's bigger than the one in Egypt, and it's like 311 miles long. You know, like the size of a city that's from Boston to New York. You know, it's like, you know, how do you have this kind of, you know, this proof of this evidence, and people would still be ignorant to the fact that this stuff is around? You know, I tell somebody about it, and they like laugh it off like I'm the crazy one. You know?
And I'm not sure what.
You know?
Exactly. Al, what was your favorite part of the conference in terms of speaker, presenter? What struck you as, if I can ask, what struck you as perhaps the most informative and if you can even describe?
I'm not sure, but I've seen. It's funny because you see so many of them. I've seen Chuck Missler. You see guys like I said, Brent Miller. I saw Elaine Marzulli. Paul McGuire was off the Richter there. He was great. When he gave his thing, he really went all out. And like the guy said on a couple of days ago, I think he said it was more like a sermon. And people don't get that very often. I was taking notes the whole time, but it's like I was taking notes the whole time. For everyone else, I have like 2 pages of notes, but for Paul McGuire, for some reason, I only have a half a page of notes because it's like you're so, involved in what he's saying and you're connecting with what he's talking about. You know what I mean?
I get that, yeah.
I thought that was pretty interesting. Also one thing I did want to say real quick to you guys, also, Paul McGuire, he's great, and I think about, the things that he puts out. Obviously, I got his book. I got you to sign it. I got him to sign it. That was pretty cool. But, listen to this guy, Mark Dice. You guys have made references to him every once in a while. And he's a pretty famous guy. And it's like, why did this, it seems like there's obviously a spirit of division coming between a lot of Christians, it seems like. He's a guy that has, over 250,000 followers.
Yeah.
On YouTube.
Yeah, he's very well known.
Yeah, and, he puts out a lot of good stuff. But the thing is, when I hear him speak, he doesn't really put out a lot of love. He doesn't really put out a lot. He exposes a lot, but he doesn't really put out a lot of love. And that spirit that I think needs to be involved there. And he doesn't really get into like the supernatural stuff. So I got on his site one day, and he actually had a post with Paul McGuire that said, a half-baked Christian Paul McGuire said something when I called into a show. But he calls in under a fake name, to a show. And I think that's, kind of unfair, at the same time. So, I just think it's for a guy that has that many followers to come out and say something like that, about a guy that obviously is speaking the truth, and captivates so many people. I just think that division, I thought it was very interesting,
Al, it's the divisiveness among Christians, within the body, is very troubling indeed, and it saddens me because there's no need. Everyone can check their egos at the door. We're all in this together. We're all human. We all have our frailties and such.
Right.
But what we need to do? We need to get together, stay together, and work toward that common goal. And Al, and I know, just looking in your eyes, I could tell the sincerity, your sincerity, and it's people like you that are going to be making the difference. And I really appreciate
it. I really appreciate it. I don't want to go to the last second, but there was also, I don't want to bring too much in, to the airways or whatever, but I thought that there might have been some friction there with Michael Revna. And, I don't know what happened or what was going on, but meeting with you guys, it just seemed so not real, to look into the eyes, like you said, look into someone's eyes. The eyes are the keys of the person's soul, and, I just don't, I don't see that.
We don't have that full story and understanding of what's going on, but there is, something that's going on there, and we're just going to have to continue to pray. And Al, we actually are up against the end of the program. We ran a couple minutes overtime, so we're going to have to let you go. But appreciate your call.
No problem, guys.
Getting your information. Definitely send that picture and any other information via text or
problem.
email.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys very much. I seen Doug. It made me think of this story when he said he ran down the stairs and jumped over the dog and caught the fire going off. I thought it was so funny to actually meet you and to look at you and think about you jumping over the dog is pretty funny. So you guys have a great day.
Hard to believe, Al. Okay, God bless.
Thanks for the call.
All right.
Glad you called.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for tonight. God bless. Stay safe. Until